You have been told that your melanin is a gift, and that is true. The eumelanin running through your skin is ancient biological engineering, protection against the kind of ultraviolet radiation that shreds DNA and causes skin cancer in populations whose bodies were never built for equatorial sun. Research tells us that darker skin allows only about 7% of ultraviolet B radiation to penetrate the surface, compared to roughly 24% in lighter skin. Your body has been guarding you since the beginning. But here is what did not make it into the pamphlet they handed you at your last appointment. The same mechanism that shields you from UV damage is also blocking the production of one of the most essential hormones your body makes. And right now, according to National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey data, more than 80% of Black adults in the United States are deficient in it. Not borderline, deficient. And across the diaspora, in the United Kingdom, in Canada, in France, in Brazil, the numbers tell the same story. If you have been assuming that getting a little sun is enough, or that you would have heard about this if it were serious, this video is going to disrupt that assumption with precision. The vitamin is vitamin D, but calling it a vitamin is one of the first things medicine has gotten wrong about it. What vitamin D actually is a hormone, one your body synthesizes when ultraviolet B radiation strikes the surface of your skin and converts a molecule called 7-dehydrocholesterol into pre-vitamin D3. Your liver then converts that into a storage form called 25-hydroxyvitamin D, the number your doctor checks when they test your levels. Your kidneys make the final conversion into the fully active hormone, 1,25-dihydroxyvitamin D3. That active hormone has receptors on virtually every tissue in your body. Your heart muscle, your immune cells, your brain, your colon, your prostate, your breast tissue, all of them waiting for this hormone to arrive and do its job. When it doesn't, the consequences are not abstract. They show up exactly where the disparities show up: cancer, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, autoimmune conditions, dementia. And here is the part that is going to stay with you. For most Black adults living above the 37th parallel, anywhere north of roughly Tennessee, Central California, or North Carolina, the sun during fall, winter, and spring does not produce meaningful vitamin D. None. The angle of the sun is too low. The ultraviolet B wavelength cannot penetrate the atmosphere at that angle to reach your skin. You could sit outside for 2 hours in January in Chicago, London, or Toronto and synthesize 0 vitamin D. And even during summer months, darker skin requires roughly 5 to 10 times more sun exposure than lighter skin to generate an equivalent amount. If you have been stepping outside and assuming you were covered, that assumption has a biological cost. Today we change that. This is what we do at Marcus Webb, Black Health Truth. We go beyond what a rushed appointment has time or incentive to tell you. And by the time this video is done, you will understand exactly what is happening in your body, why it is happening to people of African descent specifically, and what one simple daily action you can take tomorrow morning to begin addressing it. Here is what I want to walk you through. We are going to look at how your skin processes ultraviolet B radiation, and exactly where melanin enters that conversation. We are going to examine something called the vitamin D receptor, the cellular door this hormone walks through to regulate your immunity, your inflammation response, and your cancer defenses, and why the research on this receptor in Black populations has been almost entirely absent until the last decade. We are going to look at what happens downstream when that receptor is chronically understimulated. Oxidative stress, what scientists call chronic low-grade inflammation, and susceptibility to the exact diseases taking lives in our communities at disproportionate rates. And then we are going to get specific about the fix, a 1-minute morning protocol backed by peer-reviewed science and designed with your biology in mind. Here is the science of what happens in your skin. Inside the lower layers of your epidermis lives a molecule called 7-dehydrocholesterol. When ultraviolet B radiation, wavelengths between 290 and 320 nanometers, strikes uncovered skin, it converts this molecule into pre-vitamin D3, which your body then converts into vitamin D3, also called cholecalciferol. Think of cholecalciferol as the raw material that the rest of the system depends on. From there, your liver processes it into 25-hydroxyvitamin D. Your kidneys make the final conversion into the active hormone. The whole cascade begins at the surface of your skin. And eumelanin, the dark pigment that defines your skin's tone, sits in the upper layers of the epidermis and absorbs that same ultraviolet B radiation before it can reach the molecule below. It is your body's biological sunscreen, extraordinary protection. And at lower latitudes with limited sunlight, a significant barrier to the very hormone that your organs are waiting for. A 2019 study published in the Journal of Investigative Dermatology compared vitamin D synthesis across skin types ranging from palest to darkest, exposing participants to identical doses of ultraviolet radiation. Lighter-skinned individuals showed rapid, statistically significant increases in their vitamin D levels. In the darkest-skinned participants, levels barely moved. That study helped quantify what epidemiological data had been pointing to for years. A major review published in the journal Nutrients in 2021, led by researchers at Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health and Brigham and Women's Hospital, found that African Americans had between 15 and 20 times the prevalence of severe vitamin D deficiency compared to European Americans. 15 to 20 times. That is not a rounding error. That is a structural biological disadvantage created by living in environments and at latitudes that were never accounted for in the design of public health guidance. Now I know some of you are thinking, Marcus, I take vitamin D. My doctor mentioned it. I figured I was fine. Stay with me, because here is where it gets more specific and more important. There is something called vitamin D binding protein, the transport molecule that carries vitamin D through your bloodstream. A landmark 2013 study published in the New England Journal of Medicine, drawing on over 2,000 participants from the healthy aging and neighborhoods of diversity across the lifespan cohort, found that Black Americans have significantly lower levels of this binding protein compared to white Americans. Why does that matter? Because the vitamin D that affects your cells is not the portion attached to binding protein. It is the free, unbound portion. Lower binding protein means a greater share of your total vitamin D circulates in the bioavailable form. This means that a Black American with a total 25-hydroxyvitamin D level that looks low on a standard lab report may actually have more free, usable hormone than a white American with the same number. This nuance is real, and it matters for how you interpret your results. But I want to be clear about what it does not mean. It does not mean vitamin D deficiency is not a problem for people of African descent. The downstream health consequences of chronically low total vitamin D on cancer risk, on immune function, on cardiovascular disease are documented and serious, regardless of this bioavailability adjustment. What it means is that you deserve a physician who will engage with your number in the context of your biology, not just hand you a reference range built almost entirely on data from European populations and call it done. Think about what that means. The thresholds that trigger a deficiency diagnosis, the levels considered optimal for health, the supplementation doses routinely recommended. Most of that foundational research did not include adequate representation of Black patients. A 2021 study from researchers at City of Hope identified specific genetic variants in the genes SLC24A5, SLC45A2, and OCA2, genes controlling skin pigmentation, that were also strongly and independently associated with vitamin D deficiency in African Americans. This was among the first studies to directly connect the genetics of darker skin color to vitamin D status in a Black population. Before that, the standard approach was to take data generated predominantly in white populations and apply it universally. And no one in the system flagged it. You have been walking into appointments where your biology was being evaluated against someone else's reference manual. That is not a conspiracy. It is a research gap with a documented history, and it has consequences. Let me tell you about Kofi. He is 58 years old, lives in Manchester in the United Kingdom, works in education, and walks every day. He is not sedentary. He is outdoors more than most of his coworkers. He gets his blood drawn every year because his daughter, a nurse, insists on it. His vitamin D comes back low. His physician notes it briefly, hands him a standard supplement recommendation, and moves to the next item on the agenda. Nobody explains that at the latitude of Manchester, Ultraviolet B synthesis of vitamin D is only possible for roughly 3 months of the year. Nobody explains that his melanin requires substantially more sun exposure than his white colleagues to generate the same output even in those months. Nobody explains that the supplement he is most likely to receive, vitamin D2, also called ergocalciferol, is significantly less effective at raising blood levels than vitamin D3. And nobody tells him about the cofactors his body needs to actually activate what he does absorb. He thinks, "My doctor knows my history. He didn't seem worried. I'll take the pills when I remember." And somewhere in his body, in tissues that have been sending quiet signals for years, the inflammatory environment slowly builds. The fatigue that does not lift after a good night's rest. The stiffness in his joints that he has started attributing to getting older. The infections that take 2 weeks to shake instead of 1. That is not weakness. Those are not inevitable features of aging at 58. Those are your body telling you that something it needs has been chronically unavailable. Let me say that again. Your body has been sending you signals, and the medical system has not been giving you the context to read them. Now let's talk about what vitamin D actually does when it arrives in adequate amounts. The active hormone, 1,25-dihydroxyvitamin D3, binds to a protein inside your cells called the vitamin D receptor. When that binding happens, the receptor travels into the nucleus of the cell and attaches to your deoxyribonucleic acid, your DNA, at specific locations called vitamin D response elements. This single binding event can switch on or switch off over 200 genes. Genes that govern how your immune cells identify and destroy abnormal cells before they become tumors. Genes that regulate the production of natural antimicrobial compounds called cathelicidins, your body's first-line biochemical defense against bacterial and viral infection. Research documented in a systematic review published in the journal Public Health Nutrition found that African American subjects had significantly reduced cathelicidin production compared to white Americans. Not because of any defect in the pathway, but specifically because of lower vitamin D levels. The machinery was there, the hormone was not. Now I know what some of you might be thinking. Marcus, that sounds serious, but those are studies about populations. My situation might be different. I hear you. But look at the cancer data and stay with me to the end of this section, because this is where it gets personal. A major review published in Nutrients found that African American men with multiple risk factors for low vitamin D had a 57% higher total cancer incidence and a 127% higher cancer mortality rate compared to those with adequate vitamin D status. Same community, same population, separated only by vitamin D levels. 13 types of cancer: bladder, breast, colon, endometrial, lung, ovarian, pancreatic, prostate, rectal, testicular, vaginal, Hodgkin's lymphoma, and melanoma, each show a documented relationship between low vitamin D and elevated risk. And across almost all 13, the mortality gap between Black and white Americans can be at least partially explained by the vitamin D disparity. A 127% higher cancer mortality rate in the same population, separated by something that costs less than $1 a day to address. That is the part nobody told you. If what we just covered makes you want to share this with someone you know, a father, a mother, an aunt who has never had this conversation in a doctor's office, this is the moment. Like this video, share it, and make sure they see it too. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had your 25-hydroxyvitamin D level tested? What was the number? I want to know what is actually being communicated in your appointments. Now the protocol. Because information that ends without a plan creates anxiety, not change. First, get the test. A serum 25-hydroxyvitamin D level is a standard blood panel addition. Ask your doctor to include it at your next visit. Ask for the specific number in nanograms per milliliter, not a verbal pass or fail. The research indicates that levels above 30 nanograms per milliliter are considered sufficient by most guidelines. But researchers working specifically with Black populations suggest that optimal benefit for immune function and cancer protection may require levels between 40 and 60 nanograms per milliliter. Bring your number to your physician and ask what it means for your biology specifically. Second, the form of supplement matters. If supplementation is appropriate for you, research consistently shows that vitamin D3, cholecalciferol, the form your skin naturally produces, is significantly more effective at raising and sustaining blood levels than vitamin D2. This distinction rarely comes up in a 10-minute appointment. Now you know to ask. Third, the cofactors. Vitamin D3 is fat-soluble, meaning it is absorbed best when taken with a meal containing healthy fats, a handful of nuts, avocado, a fatty fish. Research also points to the importance of pairing vitamin D3 with vitamin K2 in the menaquinone 7 form. Vitamin K2 helps ensure that calcium activated by vitamin D is directed into your bones and not your arterial walls. And magnesium, found in dark leafy greens, seeds, and legumes, is required by the enzymes that metabolize vitamin D at multiple steps in the activation pathway. Without adequate magnesium, your body cannot fully convert and activate the hormone, even when total levels appear sufficient. This is a cofactor gap that almost never comes up in a routine appointment. Now it has come up for you. This is educational information. It is not a replacement for a conversation with a physician who knows your full health history, your medications, and any conditions that may affect your metabolism. Please bring everything you have heard today to that conversation. What changes when you walk into that room with this information is not the system. It is your position inside it. So let us bring it all the way back to where we started. Your melanin is not a design flaw. It is refined, ancient, necessary protection. But that protection was engineered for an environment with high ultraviolet radiation year-round, near the equator. Most of the diaspora does not live in that environment. We live at latitudes and inside built environments that require a deliberate, informed response. Not shame, not alarm, a plan grounded in science. What you now understand is this: the extraordinary UV blocking capacity of darker skin simultaneously reduces the body's ability to synthesize a hormone that activates over 200 genes across your immune system, your cardiovascular system, and your cellular defense against cancer. The research across Harvard, the New England Journal of Medicine, City of Hope, the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, and the Nutrients Journal is consistent. The deficiency is real. The health consequences overlap almost exactly with the diseases taking Black lives at disproportionate rates. And the intervention is available, inexpensive, and documented. What changes is not your biology. What changes is the quality of the decisions your biology now gets to make. Here is your 7-day challenge. Starting tomorrow morning, I want you to do one thing. Find your most recent blood work and look for the number labeled 25-hydroxyvitamin D or 25-OHD. Write it down. If you do not have recent lab work, make the appointment this week and request that test specifically. When you are in front of your doctor, ask them this question: what does this number mean for my body, given my ancestry and where I live? And what form of vitamin D are you recommending? Notice what happens next. Notice whether they engage or move past it. That moment, that question in that room, is an act of advocacy for your own life. If this video gave you a number, a mechanism, or a question you did not have before today, that is exactly what this community is built for. Subscribe, because this is where people who look like us come for the science that has too often been conducted without us in the room and explained without us in mind. We keep going.